Hey, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to another show. I am joined tonight with my special guest, Michael from the Canadian Atheist. And I got to mute the other transmission I've got going on here. Sorry about that. So, I've been wanting to have this conversation for a little bit. Donald Trump and his new regime, they've been, marinating America in stupidity for a little bit. And, Canada is constantly coming up. Canada should be the 51st state. Canada should do this. Canada should do that. At least according to Marmalade Mussolini. But the thing that's made this weird for everybody is what exactly at what point did Canada pee in Donald Trump's Wheaties? Although Wheaties seems like a healthy choice, it's probably Lucky Charms or something like that, or Fruit Loops. And so Michael is Canadian, and so I figured, you know what, we'll have a show, we'll have a conversation, we'll pick each other's brains about what's going on, because I'm very certain after seeing Canadian hockey fans booing the American national anthem and other acts of deliberate, blatant Canadian counter-patriotism, which I was surprised to see. I'm like, okay, let's see how things are going over there. So anyway, welcome, Michael, and go ahead and give an introduction. Let everybody know what you've been up to, and we'll get this going.
Hey, Jefferson. Thanks so much for having me back. So the first thing I'll do is I'll show this. Everybody. So I found this off of a great Canadian website, shock of all shocks, Kopke 613. So check that out if you're interested in getting some cool Canadian swag. He has stuff with Canadian geese, our Air Force and all that other fun stuff that I plug my computer so it doesn't die. Yeah. So it's interesting. Okay, before I rip the United States a new one, I'm going to say that I have no delusions of grandeur. Canada's not perfect by a long shot. Now, having said that, it has been, we watched with shock and horror November 5th. For context, there's an Ontario election, a provincial election going on right now, and I'm here.
Yeah.
I didn't miss seconds of. I took November 5th off. I took it as a holiday to watch everything around the U.S. election. I was pretty sure that America wouldn't choose the psychopath, but you did. And so we've been watching in shock horror ever since that day. And it's all really interesting. There's a bunch of stuff kind of floating around. I wrote 4 pages of shit to talk about. And it's, I guess, where do you want to touch on first, Jefferson?
Well, okay, so let's talk about the title of the video I named it the 51st state, because that's what Trump kept talking about, the idea of this notion of this. And I think most people that know anything about even a little bit about like international law or even just basic American civics know the US can't just help itself to another country and make it a state. But it kept getting more and more disconcerting to us because he kept doubling and then tripling down on it. Like, no, they're going to do this. Or, and I guess the deal was that you guys were just letting in way too many drugs, which I think last year you let in 4 pounds of fentanyl. How dare you?
Yeah.
And too many illegal immigrants, which I mean, are Jim Carrey and Tom Cruise, they're legal citizens now, right? I mean, I hope he's not holding a grudge against them.
Ryan Reynolds. So many. Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah. The whole fentanyl thing is hysterical. Your drug enforcement agency put out a report on this. I think it was sometime over the last 18 months that said the amount of fentanyl that has crossed our border into yours is less than a commercial carry-on suitcase.
Yeah.
Right. So somewhere around 10 kilograms, 23-ish pounds.
I think that's less than what the average American citizen working as a mule moves in a vehicle from the south over across the U.S. southern border.
Yeah, probably.
Because they're usually the ones moving it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, it makes sense that your Mandarin Mussolini would claim these extravagant numbers, right? We have the largest unprotected border on the planet, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, and it's the irony is, what I was waiting. One of the things I was waiting for is and my wife and I had this bet. Like we should have made it Trump bingo, right? To see how long it was going to take before he said that they're going to build a northern wall and we're going to pay for it, right?
I was waiting for it too. I was surprised that it didn't come up. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it's because he understands now that everybody can just look at the southern border and be like, yeah, because Mexico didn't give you a single peso, dollar, or otherwise for any of that. And it's so funny, kind of jumping all over the place here. So yeah, so the whole 51st state idea, if you talk to politicians in the U.S., I think the Democrats would love it because, and my wife is the one with a poli-sci degree, and we were chatting about this a little bit. She said, "Well, if it were to happen, then we would get at minimum as many electoral votes based on population as California does, and you'd have to increase your electoral college. I think she said it was 294 or 297 in order to equal it all out, and all of Canada. I mean, Canada is not liberal coast to coast to coast." Right. There are pockets, right, where our friend Dougie Shitpants is from. He's from Manitoba, which is a fairly conservative province. Alberta, pretty conservative. Saskatchewan, pretty conservative. But everywhere else is pretty liberal. And I should also say that our idea of conservative still recognizes healthcare as a human right, and other things that your GOP doesn't seem to think is true, unless, of course, it's a fetus, right? But then when it's born, fuck you. You should have thought better. But we would still have all of those electoral college, right? Because even with your system, right, whoever wins the state gets all of the electoral college. So 294, and we would start with what, 108? Like right off the bat. Probably safe to say the Republicans would never have the presidency again.
I mean, at least for a generation, because the Canadians would be so spiteful. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, just out of spite, like, no, we're never voting for a Republican. Get the hell out of here.
And so it is interesting just from that perspective. And then the whole start of this whole tariff thing came up, which is just hysterical. And it's hysterical for a bunch of reasons, right? You have the morons on Fox News saying, going on after basically when Trump said, "Oh, we're going to do these tariffs," and then okay, we push the pause button, and everyone on Fox News and OAN and Newsmax are all saying these things like, I'm terrible looking. No, it's fine. Said, we're going to pause this for a little while, and all of the sycophants on Fox News, OAN, Newsmax, etc., said that Canada, Mexico, all they capitulated, they bent the knee, they kissed the ring, whatever metaphor you want to use, and all of us were going, does dude read? Like, does dude understand anything? So on December 17th, Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden signed an agreement to the increased border security. And so all Trudeau did was realize how stupid Trump is and say, well, I'll just bring this up again and he'll think I'm giving him shit. And that's what he did. And that's what Trump thought. And Fox, OAN, and Newsmax, I was like, oh, Canada they totally fucking caved, man. No, we didn't. But this idea of a border czar was just a buzzword, right? Because Trump is like a cat. He's distracted by shiny things. And so all you have to do is throw something. The border czar. Oh, I can glom onto that. They're going to give us a border czar. They never talked about that before. The fuck? So it's just a person that's going to oversee all of the stuff that they agreed to on December 17th. It's stupid. The idea of tariffs. This is also funny. So 60% of the oil that the U.S. imports comes from us. 80% of the softwood lumber you import comes from us.
Yeah.
90% of the liquid natural gas that you import comes from us. And last year, somewhere in the neighborhood of 34 terawatts of power came from us.
Yeah.
If a lot of Americans, especially in the northern states, and Jefferson, you could just come stay with us, but are lucky that I'm not in charge, because I'm a prick, and I'd just be like, no oil, no gas, no lumber, no power. Fuck around, find out.
Yeah.
And so, but this idea, one of the things that's funny, again, I got so much stuff here, I got to cross off as I'm going along.
I do want to.
Oh yeah. Far away. Otherwise, I won't stop.
No, I just wanted to emphasize the thing about the energy thing since you bring that up. I'm in Michigan, so Michigan is like, I don't know what we would be like. We're like Canada's Alabama or something. But the energy stuff, we get a lot of direct energy stuff, especially the Upper Peninsula gets, I believe, natural gas.
Yeah.
So the idea of the tariffs hitting that, there was huge concern here locally in Michigan, because they were like, well, there go the prices for people buying propane and things like that to keep country homes warm through the winter.
Mhm.
So that stuff hasn't happened, but I mean, he is supposed to revisit that next month. I think he was given until March
12th or something like that. I think what's going to happen is, I think, what's that saying? Cooler heads will prevail. No, smarter heads will prevail. And someone's going to go to him and say, "Yeah, you can't do this, friend." And there's a bunch of why. But the problem is that he's already poked the beaver. Right. I won't say bear because, beavers aren't there. He's already poked the beaver, and you never poke the beaver, you only stroke the beaver. But what's,
demonetized.
China, Japan, India, and other European countries and Asian countries have already said, we'll take it. We'll buy it.
Yeah.
And so there's no need necessarily for us to just keep selling it to the US. And now what a lot of Canadian politicians have learned is that, unfortunately, this MAGA movement is going to shape US politics for a long time to come. He's going to do a lot of damage, more than he's already done, and it's going to take a long time to undo. Right. The first time he backed out of the Paris Climate Accord, a few other things. And the first day backing up, Biden's just like, back. Planet Earth, we're sorry. You took a line from our book saying you're sorry, but we're sorry for our last 4 years of fuck ups. Can we just be friends again? Right. But now, because, until he tries to change the Constitution so he can run again, because he knows he's only got 4 years to do all these things, and all the people who thought Project 2025 wasn't a thing and are now living it, he's just content to set everything on fire when the wildfires don't do a good enough job. And
yeah, we have enough of those as it is.
Yeah, I mean, and so this pokes back to the whole lumber thing. Like, you guys want to rebuild all those fucking houses that are gone? You're probably going to get a fair bit of lumber from us, or will you? Or will we just sell it? Will we just sell it elsewhere? I mean,
right, exactly.
Yes, we're probably going to sell it to you because, again, I'm not in charge, right? I'm a social worker, not a politician, and you're lucky. You just are.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I have some notes here. So we exported 2.99 trillion cubic feet of liquid natural gas.
Yep.
To the US last year. Lots of places want that. Actually, Japan right now has been talking to our politicians about, because they're expecting their energy demands to increase exponentially over the next 10 years. There's like, we'll take it. And it's all right there on the West Coast in BC. It's an easy shot across the pond. And so I don't know what's going to happen. But Jefferson, you mentioned before about the whole kind of like pissing Canadians off. And I wanted to just like, I wrote down a few things. So, so you've seen on the news, lots of Canadians are canceling trips to the US. My wife
Yep.
did. My wife is a baseball fanatic. She was going to go to spring training. She canceled her trip, her and her girlfriend. They typically spend, because my wife doesn't do anything on the non-bougie side. She stays at fancy hotels, eats fancy meals. They typically go down there for 5 days, and she spends about 10 grand.
Damn.
And she's done that every year for the past 7-8 years. They canceled the trip. She's supposed to attend 2 conferences in 2025. She has already made arrangements with the people running the conference, and she's going to be giving her keynote address via Zoom because at one of the conferences, because she's not going to the US. She's not going to give you any money.
Yep.
We typically go, I wrote down a few things here. So we went to the US 6 times last year. We went to San Francisco in December. My wife bought me a ticket for Christmas. She bought me tickets to the 49ers game. We went down there at the end of December.
Nice.
We spent 4 days there. I don't want to know how much money she spent. She's ridiculous. We went to Washington, D.C. In May. We were there over my birthday. We were there for 4 days. We met up with Dr. Josh Bowen and his wife, Megan.
Nice.
They live not too far from there. We spent about $5,000 when we were on that trip. So we've averaged over the past 3 years about $35,000 in travel to the US. And that's just us. And there are lots of other people that are doing the same thing. Not to mention the fact that and I have to say that I understand that I'm coming from a somewhat privileged position. I'm not buying anything American. I'm not buying anything from Amazon. I'm not buying anything. I never did shop at Walmart, but I would never darken their door, especially now. My grocery bill has gone up, probably not as much as your has for eggs, but my grocery bill has gone up because I'm only buying Canadian product. If I can't, like this shirt from a Canadian seller, everything I'm buying now is Canadian. I'm just boycotting the US. It's estimated that if 10%, if there's a reduction in Canadian travel to the US by 10%, that'll be worth about 140,000 American jobs lost, because that'll come in at just about $2.1 billion worth of revenue that you'll lose.
Yeah.
That doesn't include border town traffic, like Windsor into Detroit, like Toronto into Niagara Falls. Like Gananoque into Rochester, New York, and places like that. Vancouver into Seattle. All these places. It doesn't include those types of things. We cross the border to go cross-border shopping because my wife is crazy about Target. We had it here. It didn't last because Walmart had a 20-year head start. My wife's crazy about Target and Trader Joe's. So we would go there, do a bunch of grocery shopping at Trader Joe's, bring the stuff back over, some stuff we can't get here, etc. We'd spend $500 on groceries. We went, 6 times last year. We're just not doing it anymore because fuck you.
And is that and you're seeing that kind of trend across a lot of other Canadians too? Different.
Pretty much everyone we talk to. So my wife's going away for a girls' weekend this weekend. They're going to another place. They were going to fly to New York City. They're not going now.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
We're seeing this across a huge amounts, and there's other stuff. So let's see.
I do want to bring this up before it disappears on the stream, because I do have a question.
Yeah.
So blessed be he. She writes, Trump's plan of the 51st state makes sense. Some Canadians will disagree. That's expected. My understanding is it's overwhelming.
Yeah. 61%. There was a poll that was done by the Globe and Mail. 61% of Canadians that were polled said if they had the chance to vote in the US election, they would have voted for Harris.
Yeah.
61%. That's more support than either candidate got from your own population.
Yeah. She also writes, Trump will unify Canada and America. It sounds good to me. He's a unifier. He brings people with great potential together. You cannot deny that. I can, because a lot of the people, the guy that's currently running is a con man. I mean, Elon Musk is a midwit and a charlatan, and Trump is letting that guy run an efficiency program that isn't based on waste, fraud, or abuse or any kind of efficiency. It's chopping at efficacy and essentially going after things that Congress agreed to pay for, but Elon and the president don't like, so they declare it waste. That's not how waste, fraud, and abuse work. But that's
so if you want to talk about fraud, let's see. Trump built a tower in Toronto about 20 years ago. There are still lawsuits with the contractors against Donald Trump because he didn't pay them, because that's what he does. He doesn't pay contractors. The homeowners association of that building filed a lawsuit and had his name removed from the building.
Good. She also writes, and I actually I'm a little offended at this, just a little bit. USA and Canada would be a formidable force to deal with if Trump unites North America. We were united, and Canada and the United States have always been a formidable force because we've always had friendly relations. It's been one of the longest, most peaceful border relationships in the history of the world. Yeah. The idea that they need to be, Wyoming squared or whatever, whatever he's going to rename it, Canerica, I don't know, is just stupid. Not only that, but the whole the just disregarding that kind of relationship in general, I think, is part of the problem. Like, well, if we're all under one flag, then we're all going to work. Like, okay, well, I just want to ask somebody who might be inclined to agree with her on this, if you're a conservative. The reason that we have 50 states with 50 different flags and 50 separate constitutions is because of a federated nation that was sort of like an experiment, a laboratory of democracy, as it were, not one giant super government. And so it's interesting to see people who would have, like 10, 15 years ago, talked about globalization and the merging of these major powers into one giant landmass, applauding Trump for doing exactly that with Canada, just sucking it up and making America the blob even bigger.
Yeah, I don't get it. The tinfoil conspiracists against globalization, like aren't globalists a bad thing? No, but it's also, I mean, what's funny is they talk about lower taxes. Yeah, but we'd also lose our tax paid healthcare. Healthcare is not free. We pay for it through our taxes. Your tax rates are, no, speaking directly to Blessed Be, your tax rates are adorable. I would love to have your tax rates.
They're quite well. I mean, if you're a working person, if you're making around $55,000, I mean, they feel very onerous because you're basically topped out. Anyone making north of that, the relief just keeps coming. If you can keep earning more than that, the ability for people to actually get over that hump, though, that's a little bit difficult.
Well, yeah,
it's sickening to me that a firefighter pays more proportionately of their income in income taxes and other taxes,
teachers, nurses, all these,
all of them, as compared to a hedge fund billionaire. I think that's disgusting.
There isn't the same type of, unless you're mega rich here in Canada, isn't the same type of tax structuring, kind of stuff you can do here. My wife and I both make very comfortable livings. My wife is in the highest tax bracket. I'm in the second, and we pay the absolute motherfucking truckload in taxes, and I don't begrudge any of it, because I can never lose my house due to medical debt. It's not a thing. Unless I'm mistaken, bankruptcy in the U.S. Hey Jay, bankruptcy in the U.S. the number one cause is medical debt. Am I correct in that? Yeah.
I think it still is. Yeah.
It's not a thing here, right? Yep. Because we're compassionate and we understand that people can get sick, and you shouldn't be sitting on the street corner with a tin fucking cup because you got sick. You guys subsidize medical companies and pharmaceutical companies. right up the ass. And what do you get for that? You get bent over and fucked up that same ass. You have some of the highest drug prices in the free world. A really good experiment would be if you guys actually did, I'm going to say something that's going to shock some people right now, socialized medicine. It's not really even socialized medicine.
It's single payer.
It's single payer medicine.
Yeah.
All it means is the government's the one that cuts the check. I can go to any doctor I want. I can go to any specialist I want, anything. There is no such thing. I'm not waiting in line for anything. It's all made up bullshit told to you by the people in government, because they're the ones who get dividends and kickbacks from the insurance companies to tell you how shitty our system is. It's not the case. You're being lied to.
Yeah. I want to point out, so I'm sure she's saying this to be cheeky and to trigger people, but I want to trigger her back. Just don't forget Mexico. When Trump gets Canada, Mexico is next. I don't know how old, blessed be he is, but maybe she remembers this if she was around. Michael, you might remember this. You and I think, are around about the same age. The Amero conspiracy. Does anyone remember the Amero, the North American Monetary Union? This was a conspiracy. Let me just find the initial thing here. It was a theoretical economic and monetary union of 3 North American countries, Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. Implementation would involve the 3 countries giving up their current currency units, the dollar, the Canadian dollar, the Mexican peso, and then they would adopt a new one called the Amero. And so this ended up becoming this weird thing. And I don't know exactly. The idea had been, I think the Fraser Institute. Yeah, it was the Fraser Institute, I think, came up with a symbol for this thing. So it was very theoretical. But right-wing conspiracy groups caught on to this and just glommed onto it. And we're like, well, this is a sign that globalization is out of control. If Mexico, Canada, and North America merge like this, where they join their currency, their sovereignty and their individuality as nation states will cease to be. It will cease to be a thing. Mm-hmm. And now we have somebody who I think it tilts conservative, at least in sort of the MAGA flavor of butchered classical liberalism, in the American style. Like, hey, Trump is gonna do this. Like, well, why stop there? We don't stop until you unify us from, the Northern Territories all the way to Tierra del Fuego, and we'll just call it Amero or something like that, and then it's all one country. Once you've done that, you no longer have a border to worry about because it's all just ocean at that point. So no more walls and no more threatening Canada becoming a 51st state or any of the other stuff. It's just one big country with an international parliament.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. You mentioned something earlier. I did want to touch on about the whole idea of a democracy. Right, the U.S. isn't a democracy. Right, it's a democratic republic.
Yeah,
Canada's a democracy.
Yeah.
But it's just this kind of weird idea. Anyway, that's getting kind of off track. I think it also bears mentioning that if this whole America was thing just happened as well in Mexico, like Mexico's not going to lean Republican either, right? Like, I mean, and you have the largest city in North America there, Mexico City, which makes New York City look like nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, fabulous. NHS, the unsolvable problem along with gun control that everybody else solved.
Yeah, it's this unbelievable thing. And just to get that, thanks for that, for bringing me back on course. If you guys did it, you could do it better than anybody else, right? We are 10% of your population.
Yeah.
Right. With your tax base, you could do it better than anyone. And you truly could be a world leader in it. Right now, the only thing you're better at is things like infant mortality. Right? Like where you actually have a higher infant mortality than Canada does.
Yeah, I mean, we're very proud of the fact that being an expecting mother is quite dangerous. and
Oh,
getting more dangerous. In fact, Texas has actually refused to. There was an article that was released today from ProPublica. Texas isn't allowing anybody to study the long term or the health effects of their abortion bans. So ProPublica is doing it for them and doing a series of investigative reports on it. So that should be interesting to check out.
look, okay, so I agree with Texas. Where's the benefit in longitudinal studies? I'm being facetious.
This is an anti-science kind of place down here, Mike.
But sticking to the financial, like we can get into the social aspect too, but sticking to the financial thing, we're talking about like all this other stuff. One of the things that Trump has talked about is how how the U.S. finances Canada. That's another lie that you've been told. There is a trade deficit between Canada and the U.S. and it's somewhere, and it hovers between $55 and $70 billion. Okay. Now, put your thinking caps on for just a second. You're 10 times our population. How do you think we are going to buy as much from you as you do from us?
It's a common problem. Yeah.
If it was equal, like I'd be a lot fatter from eating all the shit that we have to import. Right? And I just lost over 100 pounds. I don't want to gain it back. So
but you can do it here in America, Michael. You can.
Yeah.
Here we put ranch dressing on everything. I mean, I think some people even add it to their coffee. So I should say this. So again, not only is Blessed Be He, a Christian conservative, embracing globalization, but she's also embracing the reality of climate change. Canada could be the breadbasket of America, just like North Africa was the breadbasket of the Roman Empire. It makes sense. One of the reasons, and people have pointed this out, one of the reasons that Trump is kind of right to be envious or at least covetous of getting Greenland is because if he's been getting the security briefings that everyone's pretty sure he's getting, they're talking about the permafrost and ice melt that's happening in Greenland. The more that happens, the more likely it is that we get easier access to the mineral wealth that is projected to be in Greenland. And so he wants it so he can get that mineral wealth. Canada is looking to become one of the dominant crop locations in the world because as global warming affects the United States, it's making Canada's climate slightly more temperate in areas and making them a more viable place to grow high yield commercial grains.
Which is terrible. It shouldn't be that way. But
yeah, that's just more monoculture, which is a problem that we have here. And yeah, we just want to export that problem, shift it into the middle of Canada, into its breadbasket, so that we can deal with the fact that our former breadbasket is mostly always on fire. It makes sense if you understand, yes, climate change in an era of like colonizing empire, where people are essentially the existing national powers are grasping at whatever is not in flames or underwater so that they can survive a little bit longer, is kind of desperate and sick. But I mean, if it weren't desperate and sick, I don't think that we would have, we wouldn't have conservatives contributing to political conversations. That's usually what they bring. So anyway, just wanted to
it's interesting you bring that up, and we haven't touched on something else near and dear to my heart: alcohol.
The
only time I drink is when we go south, which I'm doing on Tuesday. But going to Mexico, not to the U.S.
You got to be careful down there. Don't get those Americans to convince you to bring anything back with them.
What's funny is my wife and I have done some interesting travel shopping. So she has a T-shirt that says Gulf of Mexico Forever on it. We both have these Canada AF shirts, and she has another T-shirt that has like a very cool kind of like kaleidoscope pattern. And if you look at it really carefully, you can see FDT in it, which she's very proud that she found that. So alcohol. So when the first threat of tariffs came through, basically all of Canada just said, okay, we're pulling all the American shit off the shelves.
Yeah.
The LCBO, or the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. I know control is a terrible thing. Communism.
We actually have those here at the state level because of the way alcohol is regulated in this country. It's weird.
Yeah.
So
So the LCBO is the largest buyer of Kentucky bourbon in the world.
really, you guys drink that much bourbon?
Yeah, it's a big thing up here,
Huh,
and
okay.
we just stopped. We're just not buying it, and we took it all off the shelf, and we're just kind of sitting on it for now. We may light it on fire, just to see how well it burns at some point. But
I wouldn't recommend. I mean, because it's Kentucky bourbon, you know, I kind of like the governor of Kentucky currently, Bashir,
yeah,
but Mitch McConnell's also from there, and Kentucky's got a lot of problems.
yeah,
But Kentucky was also the home of some progressive groups back in the day. But now, if it's Tennessee whiskey, light it away. Yeah.
yeah. No, I'm pretty sure it's Kentucky. We also the LCBO is also the third largest buyer of California wine in the world. Yeah,
That makes
apparently
sense.
there's a lot of alcoholics in Ontario, and so we're just not buying that stuff, and that's billions upon billions upon billions of dollars at a place that right now, thanks to your Führer's new budget that was just released, is going to lose
Yeah.
a whole bunch of money in Medicaid and food stamps and stuff like that to these most impoverished places where the farmers and all these other people who really need that money aren't going to get it anymore. And so, I mean, but I'm sure it's Biden's fault in some way.
Doubting Thomas writes, yes, much better chance of California becoming 11th province than Canada becoming 51st state.
It's funny. I mean, there's like, how many times in the last 20 years has Texas talked about seceding? Like, isn't it every time they don't get something they want?
Probably every other day.
Yeah.
I mean,
and so I don't know if California's ever. I don't know if it's ever even escaped the lips of a Californian politician. I don't know.
there was a vote on a proposal to split California into 3 separate states.
Really?
But it was large. Yeah, but it was large. This was several years ago, but it was largely kind of it was sort of an exercise in gerrymandering because it would split them into 3 or 4 states, and essentially the one state would contain like a coastal region that would basically wall off, in a sense, the coastal cities that are all liberal Democratic voters.
Okay.
And then divide the remaining state areas into reliably conservative blocks.
Oh, okay.
So you took one massively Democratic state and broke it up into 4 smaller states, one liberal with hardly any electoral college votes anymore, and then 3 reliable Western, Western territory style states. So it'd be a little bit like not as small as Wyoming or Montana, but like a Nevada or something like that, depending on the population size. It did not go. And then there's been the writings on the idea of Cascadia, which is a union of Washington, Oregon, and California, all becoming one separate country.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you did something like that, Canada could be like the coolest goatee, because we could have like Washington, Oregon, and California on one side, and then New York and all the, and then Canada across sides would be this really cool goatee, kind of thing. And then you'll leave the cesspool in the middle. And I say cesspool, like I should say this, and I've said this a lot on Facebook recently and on other social media platforms. There are many, many Americans that I love, but America can go fuck itself. Like, I'm not a fan. 0 to 10, 0 stars, would not recommend. And just for 1,001 reasons, right? It's, all of the things that and I think that there's this problem. And again, for everybody who's started listening now, go back to the start where I said Canada's not perfect, because we're not. But there's this idea of American exceptionalism is so misplaced. It's just, you guys are really, really good at gun violence, and
except one might say exceptional, Michael.
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
take back what you said about us not being exceptional.
Yeah. But it's just this, it's like, I think that America's got the United States of America has a lot of really good things about it. But it's especially right now, especially for all those people that are kind of like insular, right? The people who just listen to their local news, stuff like that, or maybe state news, or maybe watch a national broadcast every once in a while. Y'all don't realize the entire fucking planet is laughing at you right now. Like the whole
Yeah, I mean,
world is laughing at you,
yeah.
including us, including me on a damn near daily basis. Every day, I think to myself, he can't say anything any dumber than he just said. And then he turns around and he does. Like, for instance, yesterday, he said that this whole idea of these emails that Doge wanted to all government workers to
One of the
send.
most obvious, I mean, you've probably seen this kind of thing before. That is one of the most obviously bad techniques to use as a manager.
Yeah,
That kind of half-assed micromanagement. It's just like, what are
yeah,
you doing?
but the funniest thing is what he said, and anybody can find this clip of him saying this. He said, so this whole idea is you send an email, you have with the 5 things you did that day, week, whatever, that period of time, right? And if you don't do it, you'll be fired, or you might not be.
Right. Yeah.
What?
So, and that's the point, right? Like, so I mean, for anybody that got that, the responsible thing to send back is 5 bullet points. You can shampoo my crotch. Done.
Yeah.
Right? There's no way they're gonna. I mean, they might find it eventually and then be like, "We don't like the cut of your jib, sir." I'm like, "Yeah, I already made friends with a tech firm outside of here, or a private. You know, I'm going to work for private health insurance because that's gonna, continue to make monstrous profits under this, this moron president." So
It's worse.
yeah,
It's worse than that, Jefferson. The Department of Government Efficiency. How efficient is it to have somebody go through 2.5 million emails?
exactly. Yeah. And then on top of it, to even evaluate the content of those emails, like you're not doing that. Like, no, and that's, the idea that he then doubled down and he's like, well, whoever said that you didn't have to answer it, we don't like that attitude. And that person should also leave. Like, you can't evaluate the 2 million emails you got. People were sending in, they were porn bombing as a response. They were sending in dirty jokes, scatological images, all sorts of crazy stuff, and limericks. It didn't matter. It just, and then Trump tried to then say the next dumb thing. Well, really, it was just to verify that they even existed.
Right.
Like, okay, how are you going to verify that the responses that you're getting are from real people and not, let's get real paranoid. How do we know it's not some deep state bot created by an Android replica of Kamala Harris in a basement somewhere?
Or like, someone who forgot to turn their out of office off.
Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if that counted? Yeah. As soon as they put ding, I will be out of the office. Yeah. Like, I did respond.
Yeah. What about, it's like we talk about, verifying the existence. What about verifying the existence of 150 or 200-year-old people that are collecting Social Security? Which isn't happening.
Which isn't a thing. Yeah. And on top of it, this dude is supposed to be some wizard at computer code and all this other kind of stuff. Doesn't understand that that's a side effect of limping along with COBOL, or the one issue that he had, I think, involved multiple, repeated Social Security numbers, which is an issue with SQL. Yeah. So, and they're just basic development. Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about, but he was confident in going on Twitter and calling these people artards and stuff on Twitter. They just don't understand what they're doing. And it's like, you don't know what you're talking about. This is not the issue that you think this is. It's the opposite of that. This was already taken care of, and now you're turning it into a problem that was fixed. Yeah, he's just a wreck. Yeah,
it's interesting. One of the funny things that I think is like, as someone who manages people, it's you kind of walk this. You have to walk this fine line, right? You can't run. So I mean, if I take what I do and I just blow it up into the idea of a country, you can't run a country like a business. You just can't. I am not for runaway spending, throwing money at every single thing. That I'm not for that either. I have to, as much in my life as I have to in everything else. You have to be fiscally responsible, right? But you can't look at this and just say, well, it's a business and we have to, we can't operate in the negative. We can only operate in the positive, this, that, and the other thing. Um, it doesn't work that way when there's a place where people live, right? You have to have compassion. You have to have, what would Jesus do, right? He'd be a socialist. But
Well, we could argue about that until we're both very, very old men. But
yeah, but
no, I mean, yeah, it's probably one of the worst bits of propaganda, because the idea, there are a lot of Americans that think, and they get seduced by this anytime somebody comes along, that two things need to happen. One, the American economy is a piggy bank, and in order to spend anything on anybody, it needs revenue. It's like, that's not how public finance works, especially in a system like the federal US system with a mint that prints its own credit. It's a very different animal. That don't, if you approach it like, oh, well, we can pay out this much, but we can only get back this much. We have to operate within our means. It's like, their means are very different than your means, and the really easy thing for people to understand about this is, like, imagine that you had a problem paying off a credit card, but you had the authority to print your own currency that credit card company had to accept as payment, and you just issued that, and then you wiped it off the books. People would be like, well, that would cause a lot of problems if everybody could do that. I'm like, well, yeah, if everybody could do that, but what if one big thing called the federal government could do exactly that, and then some? The idea that it has to be run like a household budget, or even run like a company, is that's the fastest way to set yourself up for failure in federal civil service. Now,
yeah,
at the state level, you have to consider that, because a lot of states have hamstrung themselves with balanced budget amendments and things like that. They've made those part of their constitution. They have to operate in the black, and they don't print their own currency. They pay taxes up to the federal government. They have their own tax burden as a state. But as the federal government goes, that's a completely different species. I mean, it's not even an animal at that point. You went from, like, all the 50 different animals the states represent to dragon unicorn. Completely different economic system.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and yet you have these. So if you take it all down, and I like the analogy you used, as kind of like a company, right? So I've only seen bits and pieces of the new budget that's going to hit, and it's going to be catastrophic for a lot of people. Not for the rich people, but for a lot of people. And so imagine if you had that same company, and the people inside who work for the company, you're going to have them do all these different jobs, but you're not going to give them a chair to sit in anymore, or even a desk to work on. They're just going to have to kind of work on the floor, and they're only going to have a little bit in the way of lights, and a little bit in the way of electricity and windows and all this other stuff. They don't get a lunch break, and they don't get any food and stuff like that. That's kind of tantamount to what this budget is going to look like, right?
Yeah.
What is it? $880 billion cut from Medicaid, $230 billion cut from Department of Agriculture that administers food stamps and stuff like that. And I've already heard some of the rhetoric that goes along with this, is that they're not cutting Medicaid. They're just cutting the money that goes to the committee. Well, the committee is the one who decides where the money has to go, and so they have to decide where it's not going to go now, right?
Right.
And what this is going to do is this is directly going to impact all the people, most of the people, a lot of the people who voted for Donald Trump.
Mhm.
And you are absolutely batshit fucking crazy delusional if you think he gives a flying fuck about you.
He's selling a gold card now to bring in international wealthy people.
Exactly, a gold card. Yeah, I posted a thing on Facebook about that. It's like, $5 million. It's like, I wouldn't become a U.S. citizen if you gave me $5 million. We've had these discussions before. Like, 'cause my wife is kind of a big deal in what she does, and she has been approached by U.S. organizations, and we just laugh at it. Like, she was approached by an organization in Florida, like, oh, live in Florida, stuff like that. And we just looked at each other and we started laughing. Like, there isn't a dollar figure.
Yeah.
There isn't a dollar.
Yeah, as unstable as it is. Yeah, it's not. I do. Okay, so now it's time to do Jefferson Spatchcock's moment of political theory education. Blessed be he writes, what do you think socialism is? I know specifically what it is. So take out a notebook, blessed be he, and write this down, because you say socialism is giving free money to lazy, incompetent people. Now, you back off that a little bit by saying not disparaging disabled people, though they deserve taxpayer money. You might be one of the few conservatives that actually believes that. When you become a full fascist, you will understand that for the health of the nation, those disabled people are eaters and are no longer productive. So maybe steps need to be taken to prevent them from being a net drag on the nation's health and strength. I don't know if you've watched anything with Germans in it from the mid-century, back when they were well-dressed but naughty. But their philosophy was a little bit more hardcore than yours is now. Socialism specifically is the public ownership of capital, the means of production. That is all that it is. Think worker co-op. It has nothing to do with government, with a state paying out checks or giving benefits to citizens. That is social welfare, not socialism. You are confused, ignorant, and if you keep that kind of ignorance up, you're going to get kicked. Don't say stuff that a quick Google search can show you is demonstrably wrong. That is not what socialism is. You're barely getting what social welfare is, but we'll see what you come back with. So anyway.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see if this blessed be he is a Christian. That would be an interesting question for me. When I said before about Jesus being a socialist, it's like, he talks about in the Bible, not to drag the Bible into this, but he talks about taking care of people, right? Jesus is somebody that the MAGA GOP wouldn't want to be associated with, not in any way, shape, or form. Right. And this idea that, giving things to lazy people, I have this kind of crazy idea that any civilized nation can and rightly should be judged for how they care for the least fortunate, for the most impoverished, for the least able people. If a person is not able to care for themselves, it is society's responsibility to care for them. Now, if they won't, that's a different story. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about people who just want to, let's just take a stereotype, they just want to sit, play video games, eat cheesies, watch pornos, and masturbate. I'm not talking about those people, right?
That's actually the American dream, but
well, okay, sorry, I'm shitting on you.
You win the lotto, and then those things
ding,
follow.
ding, ding. I'm talking about people who cannot, right? And it goes back to what I said, kind of bounced around a little bit here, so I apologize for that. But this idea of American exceptionalism, right? People talk about America, best country in the world. Fuck that. You don't even crack the top 10. You don't crack the top. You don't crack the top 10 in any index for well-being anywhere on the fucking planet. And to think that you do, you are fucking delusional.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the reason, one of the things that I think is becoming a problem, I'm thinking about doing a video about this later, is that the disconnect and the dissatisfaction that a lot of people are having right now, and just the way that we talk about this kind of stuff, people are like, well, we're having this backlash into right-wing stuff. And it's like a paradigm shift. And if you listen to the right wingers, like the Trumpers, they're saying that they're doing this because they have to prevent the woke tidal wave, this crazy leftist thing that's going to take over. But when you actually look at what's going on, what most people are really kind of upset with is modern liberalism, which is essentially just trying to put a pretty face, a more acceptable face, to take the harsh corners off capitalism, and especially late stage capitalism, and the effect that sort of your modern conservatives are having, and both agree that capitalism's cool. They don't want to interrupt that. They basically don't want to apologize for any of the namby-pamby softening language that the modern liberal has become obsessed with. And they don't want it. They definitely don't want it. So they're starting to lean more into like classical liberalism, get the state out of there. It's just the only thing the state's good for is a really strong military, and that's it. We're just going to cut taxes, and anybody that wants to get super wealthy here, they're going to rip and run. The problem is the stuff that would actually be really, really effective here would be left wing.
Yeah.
You let the conservatives tear down Medicare and Medicaid. You build it up with something better. You replace. You don't have Social Security. The Republicans ruined it. UBI.
Yeah.
Now see if they can take that away. Oh, they got rid of Medicare and Medicaid and CHIP and all these other ones. Fine. National health care for all. Exactly. One system for everybody. You don't repair what they broke. You don't let that crisis go to waste. You build back some kind of leftist edifice that cannot be destroyed again, because the people that end up benefiting from it directly would rather die than let you see it get torn apart. I mean, what will really start to happen will be whether or not these ding-dongs who are running this game, trying to go back into this Reagan fit, this Margaret Thatcher kind of fetish of, well, we're just going to kneecap the state, and it's movement conservatism. We'll get the government out of the way and everybody can just benefit from a free rampaging economy. And it's like, that won't happen. That's that's never worked that way. And instead what you did was you just removed a bunch of people from jobs.
Yeah. Unfettered capitalism is not going to get you this fucking Norman Rockwell painting that you want. It's, and it's funny. The other thing that you mentioned that was interesting, about, not wanting to give it up, which is another reason why Canada would never, it would have to go to, even if you wanted to entertain the dumbass idea of becoming the 51st state, it would have to go to something like a referendum. Right.
Yeah.
And when we got a sense of what we would lose, nobody, even Pierre Poilievre, who is the conservative candidate for prime minister in Canada, even he wouldn't do it. Not even conservatives in Canada will touch healthcare because they understand it's a fucking death knell. It's your last day in office if you try to fuck with healthcare. And you can and it all comes back to one guy, Tommy Douglas. Look him up, blessed be he. He is the reason why Canada has the system that it has.
Yeah, didn't he start it out of Calgary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He is the guy. And it's, did he take a lot from kind of the way NHS and things worked out? Yeah, there was parts, because we were part of the British Commonwealth for so long until, 1984, I think it was. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But this idea is just unbelievable. It's never, you just need to put that out of your brain because it's not ever going to happen. There's a better chance of us joining the EU than that.
That was actually another question. I wasn't sure if you had any notes on that, because that was something that my sister was telling me about a couple of weeks ago.
I think geographical barriers is the biggest that makes it kind of a non-starter.
That's what I was wondering. But yeah, there was this talk that Canada was going to try to apply for this or something. Yeah, they were going to become part of the EU, and I was like,
yeah, I mean, I don't know if that could work. We certainly have a lot more in common with European nations than we do with the United States. But I just think from a geographical perspective, it's probably a non-starter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it probably is. I haven't shut up yet. Did you have questions you wanted to ask?
Let's see. We've kind of covered the 51st state thing, and that's pissed off a majority of Canadians. The tariffs we've touched on, so that's been a thing, and it doesn't look like it's waning much. Last kind of things that I saw, it looked like the idea of just kind of avoiding American products as much as people can has stayed. I haven't seen yet anybody report on if there's been an effect. What kind of,
I think it's still too
drag on sales.
I think it's still too early, other than what all your markets are doing, because all your markets are down. As of Tuesday, the New York Stock Exchange, on Tuesday, the New York Stock Exchange was down 1.17%. The Dow was down 1.7. The S&P was down 1.7, and the New York Stock Exchange FANG plus something, which I have no idea what the fuck that is, was down almost 3%. And that's been a kind of a trend going down. And I don't know that that's going to necessarily change. Look, there's this whole thing, right? Nobody wins a trade war. Nobody does. This is really, really going to impact us until we
Mhm.
until we find alternate means, right? Like as far as like lumber, oil, and natural gas. Once we have a pipeline to other suppliers, that's gonna make up a lot of it, right?
Yeah.
But if we start putting tariffs on other products that come into the country, then that's going to drive up the average Canadian's cost of living as well, right?
Right.
Um, so there's no getting around that. Um, but we know that we have the support of the rest of the world. That's laughing at all of you. Um, we know we have the support of the rest of the world to get through it as best we can. And yeah, I mean, you're not going to buckle our resolve when it comes to it. And this is just one guy talking, who lives just outside the city of Toronto, talking. But I know that what I'm saying is representative of every Canadian I've spoken to, including one guy who's a card-carrying member of the Conservative Party in Canada. He's one of my longest friends in the world. Um, and he's like, yeah, it's not going to happen. Like nobody's going to vote for it. Nobody's going to support it ever.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's going to be kind of the trick because I mean, right now, I mean, other than some adjustments and stuff, the U.S. stock market has been kind of hot, and in some cases, some of those stocks have been really overvalued. Tesla. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any kind of corrections later on in the year. I've got a friend that's really into this kind of stuff, but he does forecast modeling with a kind of different set of tools than other people would use, and he's predicting. I think he said he was predicting maybe some small adjustments, maybe one in the summer, but for the most part, like what his modeling was showing was that U.S. markets, and this is based on kind of how things are working now. If there was some major shock, like I don't think his modeling counts on the fact that Republicans successfully passed, like say, significantly gutting Medicare, Medicaid,
Mm.
because the amount of trouble that's going to cause for a lot of people is significant. But it's going to take a while for it to really snowball into something that becomes, when people really start howling about the effect of it. So, but he's thinking that there's a potential for a really significant downturn, probably at around 2026, end of 2026. So after the midterms.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which I was like, wait, not before, not during. That way, that just piles on, and we make sure that a lot of Republicans get voted out. And he's like, no, based on a lot of the modeling, it looks like the market will kind of stay strong, with ups and downs, but kind of still growing. He's like, because right now, most of the investment opportunities are in our stock market, so it's kind of driving a little bit of I don't know. He would call it a bubble. I don't think it looks like one, but there's definitely some overheated things in there. So who knows?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I don't know. Like, I think we will feel the pinch before you, especially because 10 times the population and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah.
I know that in some cases, like there was one report that was done that basically said if it is true that we have sourced our oil exports to others, then that could potentially see you get probably a 30% increase at your cost at the pump for gas,
Yeah. Yep.
which means you'd only be paying about what we pay for fuel.
But for us, that's yeah, that's
Yeah,
too.
and again on some of the things, but so again, it'll hit us quicker and potentially harder, and you're still not going to win. Now, like it's still not going to happen. We will never. And I'm not even worried about, oh, this video may not age well. Fuck off. We're never going to be part of the United States. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
I think the other thing I think is interesting. I want to go back to Doge for a second. Should you cut waste? Yes. I have to justify my existence and the people that I manage on a regular basis. Should you cut waste? Yes. Cut waste. Cut the fat, so to speak.
Mhm.
But you do that by going through, and there are people, smarter than me that go through line by line and look at things and, cost benefit analysis, all these different types of things. But what you don't do is what Elon Trump did, and that's go on stage with a fucking chainsaw and talk about how he's going to cut all these things. Because
it was a nice chainsaw. I mean, he was high as shit. It was a nice chainsaw as far as chainsaws go. I don't think it was functional though.
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
I'm
But I
pretty sure
mean,
it was chrome plated. Who chrome plates it? I mean, you're not going to do anything.
yeah,
Never mind. Sorry.
it's like a gold shovel when you do the digging at a ceremony, right? You're not using that shovel to actually do any work. But it's like, no, what you do is you use a scalpel, right? That's what you add. That's the tool you actually use. You actually go through and you say this, right?
Yeah.
Somebody was talking about this, the whole cuts and stuff like that. And I commented on their post and said, yeah, your nukes have never been safer. After he, fired 300 odd people and stuff like that. And I spend a lot of time on social media. And one of the forums I use a lot is Clubhouse. For anyone who still goes on, it's still a thing. And there's pretty much only one space that I go into. It's a room called Ask a Christian, where I go in as the pretty much the only atheist voice. There's a few others, but I go in there on a regular basis. And we're talking about, this thing. And so I had originally sent the guy who organized that, Nate, a link from an AP site, which he balked at immediately because, Trump kicked the AP out of the White House. So what could they possibly know? So I sent him another link from the BBC that said exactly the same thing, that they fired a bunch of people and then had to try to hire them back, but didn't have their email addresses. So to call people they knew and said, hey, can you tell so-and-so they still have a job? And, all these things. And even Musk, the other day, he admitted that they fired a bunch of people that were doing like research on Ebola. And they realized, oh yeah, I guess we should have those people. So we hired them back, and there was no interruption. And then you have RFK Jr. taking part in the cabinet meeting, hacking up a lung, like sounding like he should be in an artificial lung rather than, talking to the American public about health and safety.
When you keep talking, you're trying to downplay the effect of a measles outbreak in the Southeast, and your measles.
Did you? I'm assuming, Jefferson, you got the MMR shot like most of modern society did.
I'm certain that I have too, but I'm going to ask for another one.
Yeah,
just because.
Yeah, so for MMR, for anyone who's not sure, it was measles, mumps, and rubella, right? Old diseases, right, that are now making a comeback because, people think they're freedom bumps, right, and not measles.
For freedom bumps.
Just the dumbest fucking thing you possibly think of, right?
Patriot pox. Yeah,
Patriot pox. There you go. That's a good one. It's just this dumb idea, right? So, it's like you go in and you like, yes, should you pay? What's that line from? Remember that movie from the 1980s called Remo Williams?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that there's this whole.
I'm not sure which.
Remo Williams' Adventure Begins, the first movie, right? Where when he was talking about, how do people pay for these secret agencies? And somebody says, well, you really don't think they pay $12,000 for a hammer and $3,000 for a toilet seat, do you? Right.
Right.
Of course, like you cut the fat where it's reasonable to do so. Maybe you don't have people. I don't know if most government, I'm a public servant and I'm a salaried employee. So I don't know. I don't do overtime. Like I work till the job gets done. If I have to do more, I do more. I don't know if most government workers in the U.S. are also salary based or whether they're hourly or is an overtime a thing. I don't know. Right. So maybe you cut overtime or maybe you cut down things like that or, these other things, but you don't take away people that are part of critical infrastructure, people that make sure that, all the lights get turned on and all the things happen and all this other stuff. Like that's not an efficient way of doing it. You don't use a chainsaw, you use a scalpel. But
the problem with this is also counting on people's ignorance because most of these organizations exist because Congress passed some kind of spending, right?
Mm.
It establishes some kind of office, and that office then needs to hire staff in order to function, right? That's the first thing. And for people that have a hard time following this, especially, if anybody's watching who tends to be a little bit more libertarian, let's say that you have a government, and just for the sake of argument, we'll make it a tri-branch one. You got a judicial, legislative, and executive. The legislative people show up and they're like, you know what we need an army. So they pass an armed forces bill setting out the divisions and all this kind of stuff, and this is how we're going to do the army, and this is how we're going to pay for it, and this is how much we're going to pay. You then have to go out and do the most important thing, which is hire soldiers. You have to hire people, and those people are soldiers. And you have to do that if you do the EPA or OSHA or the IRS or any of these other kinds of branches. So when you have an executive show up and say, here's what I'm going to do, I'm going to declare something that Congress passed over there with all of its staff and all of its people. I'm going to say that's waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yeah.
Without any proof that it is. It's simply something that I find unseemly. They're wasting the American taxpayers' money. Never mind the fact that the money's spent and the American taxpayer is not getting some kind of refund. But they're going to go in there and then cut that out from underneath what Congress passed. Congress controls the purse. Congress creates those groups. Now, the executive does appoint people that are the head of like the different cabinets and things like that. They appoint, and they do supervise things like, the State Department and Department of Defense, et cetera, et cetera. Fine and good. But as far as just being able to say, oh, Congress passed that? No, they didn't. I'm firing those people. I'm getting rid of that thing. I'm rolling it into this. I'm doing that. That is not the executive's job. And most Americans do not understand that does not work. The fact that Elon Musk walked in with a group of people from the private sector and just started plugging computer equipment in and then saying people were going to be fired. If the president of the United States had done that himself, depending on the particular organization that he walked into, those people would not have to listen to the president say that they were fired. Because the president himself does not have the authority to just start dismissing people who are there without cause, funded by the Congress, because he's deliberately screwing with their work. So, and also, Cerberus said something that the Prime Minister of Canada paid that he folded. About the
yeah,
he
so
didn't though. We were actually talking about this easy.
yeah.
So Cerberus had posted something earlier, like most of the provinces actually trade more with the states than they do with each other. Canada can't survive a trade war with the U.S. without foreign aid. That may be so, but I don't think they give a shit. But he says that I agree. Responding to Doubting Thomas, that's why the Prime Minister caved in 1 week. The Prime Minister didn't give a single thing up.
Yeah.
That he hadn't already signed off on with Biden.
Yeah, on December 17th. You can go back and look at the earlier part of the stream, and you can go look this up. It's available on multiple news sources. The problem is that it's like, no, Trudeau, who's not a choir boy in any stretch. I've pretty much always voted Liberal. I've voted NDP a little bit. We have a 3-party system up here. But I've never been able to reconcile a Conservative vote, nor could I ever, especially with their social policies. No, he didn't capitulate in any way, shape, or form. What he did was realize how stupid Trump is and just said, oh, here's this thing. And so, oh, look, they gave us this thing. And so, no, you're paying too much attention to conservative media. Don't do that because they're wrong. Something that's interesting that's been bugging me for a while, too, is this idea of DEI.
Yeah.
And I've had this discussion now with many people, and I've said to many people, so you have to kind of talk about it in the form of questions. What is wrong with diversity? I hope the answer for everybody listening and watching this is, well, nothing's wrong with diversity. I hope that's the case. If not, I hope you're not too much of a bigot, but you might be. What's the problem with equity? Right? There's a great picture that floated around years ago, basically explaining the idea of what equity is. Right? And it's a nuanced difference, equity and equality. Some people, and they said, this is the way I do it. Opinions like assholes. Everybody has one. This one's mine. If you have three people who are standing at a fence, picture a fence, and there's a baseball game going on the other side of the fence, and there are three boxes. There's a short person, a not so short person, and a very tall person. Equality is everybody gets one box. They put the boxes down. The short person still can't see over the fence. The not so short person
can just see over.
Just see over a little bit. And the tall person isn't even standing on the box. He doesn't need it, right? Equity is the shortest person gets two boxes. The not so short person gets one box, and the tall person doesn't get a fucking box. He doesn't need a fucking box, right?
Yeah.
That's equity, making an even playing field for everybody. So what's wrong with equity? I hope you say nothing. Otherwise, you might be an asshole. Inclusion.
Is blessed be he here? I mean,
what's wrong with the idea of inclusion? I hope you say nothing. Otherwise, you might be an asshole. The idea of including people, whether it's like picking kids for the sports team for a thing or something else like that, or including someone who's a member of the LGBT community, or a woman in a men's thing or something else like that. I hope you don't see anything wrong with inclusion. Otherwise, you might be an asshole. So I've decided, I'm now projecting onto all of you, that there's nothing wrong with diversity, that there's nothing wrong with equity, and there's nothing wrong with inclusion. So what the fuck makes it so vilifying if you put all three together? You assholes.
Well, because it's code. It's code for reverse racism, which is what that's how they broadcast it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be cover so that you can deny white people access to things, and you can play games with what they want as a true meritocracy, where we're only evaluating people based on raw talent and ability, even though humans are notoriously bad at that. Please see the video that I did about Pine Creek fucking up sports and just raw physical advantages.
That was amazing.
So if that's any indication of how people are supposed to evaluate meritocracy, we're doomed. The DEI thing, there are criticisms on the left of what DEI is. And by and large, I think that the reason that some people roll their eyes and get cynical about it is because what DEI means for people who are taking it up the tailpipe from capitalism but can't quite put their finger on it is DEI serves as a way of telling people that what the modern liberal is going to do, and this is the Joe Biden, the Kamala Harris, the Elizabeth Warren, the Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton, is say the capitalist system is the best thing that we got. We haven't figured out anything better. Sure, it's a dog-eat-dog system. It's a competitive system. But what we want to do is make sure that we make the selection of players in the great game of capitalism as broad as possible, so everybody has a chance at kind of jumping in and competing with that. It always comes across as hypocritical because essentially, and in a way, opponents of it usually can't articulate this, but the reason is because what they're essentially doing is something that is contradictory to the nature of capitalism itself. Real capitalism, if you take the gloves off and it's just, dog eat dog, sink or swim, is about people competing for finite resources and trying to get as many as they can before they die, and taking them from other people and securing them away from other people. That's the point. It's a competition. You are in it to win. And when somebody comes along and is like, okay, well, that's what we've got as far as like a labor market and as far as the economy works. Okay, that's a little rough. Why don't we put things in here like DEI and other things like this to kind of soften the blow and let everybody know that we're really interested in giving everyone a shot at the American dream. But the shot at the dream is to be dropped into the middle of the Hunger Games. And a lot of Americans, I think, suspect that, like, okay, great, you're going to make it a little bit easy, but this doesn't really affect me at the end of the day. And then you have right-wingers saying, well, actually, what happened was those liberals are apologizing for a perfectly valid system practically given to us by God. By saying that there's something wrong with the system or that it needs to be softened in any way means that they hate you. They don't believe in you. They doubt your strength. And so what we need to do is just take all the safety precautions away. In fact, sharp corners, tack some razor blades on them and make them rusty, damn it. That's the kind of thing that sort of the classical conservatives, the paleo conservative is now offering. And people are like, you know what? God damn it. At least that son of a bitch is honest. And they kind of have a point, because that one's saying, you're right. The economy is brutal. It is nasty. It is a fucking Thunderdome. So put your studded diaper on and get your rusty, lawnmower blade swords out, because this is how we're going to play from here on out. They're not dealing with the modern liberal that's like, okay, well, can't we do that and be civilized? We can do that, but we can all be wearing arm pads and stuff like that. That's not going to affect people, because if the built-in inequality is still ratcheting up and people are still getting dropped, no matter how nice and soft and protected, liberals are trying to make it, people still feel themselves falling through the cracks, and they just look at the liberal that's doing that. They see a liar and a hypocrite and somebody who's ineffective.
Yeah.
And that's where DEI takes it on the chin, unfortunately.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. And I think it's something that I left out, and I should say, lest I be misunderstood. I am not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that people who are qualified for positions should not get those positions so that there is a totally equal playing field. The best way I can explain this is an example that I typically give. If somebody wants to be a firefighter, for example, if you can drag my ass out of a burning building, I don't give a flying fuck what you are. Straight, man, woman, trans, gay, leprechaun, I don't care. If you can't
represent leprechauns.
If you can't drag my ass out of a burning building, I also don't care what you are. You can't have that job. And so, just so that I'm not misunderstood, so someone look at that and clip it and say, look, he wants, he'll let people die in burning buildings just so that a trans person can be a fire. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Like, I'm saying that there are these guidelines that are in place. The same as there are in the military, for like somebody to do a military type job or to be a law enforcement officer. There are rules that have to be followed, and those are guidelines that are set in place by people that are smarter than probably anybody watching this stream right now, right? People who have done this for a career, people that are 30-year military people that have said, you know what, in order to do this job, you have to be able to do da 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 da. And they're more qualified than we are to decide what those things have to be to do that job. I'm simply taking a microscopic look at it and saying, firefighter, drag my ass out, cool, can't, sorry. Maybe you can do a different job. Maybe you can't be a firefighter, but maybe you can be a police officer. Or maybe you can be whatever. You can go build a snowman if you want to. I don't know. But you can't do that job. So just, lest I be misunderstood.
Yeah. Well, I should answer this question. Tom had asked two questions. What do you think of Trump? I think he described him as idle. He doesn't really like. I'm guessing you're saying that he doesn't really do much. What's my opinion of him, and what's my opinion of how he's handling Ukraine? My opinion of Trump is that if the Republican Party had any sense of itself from even 30 years ago, Trump would not be allowed in their party. If they had any self-respect, they would have removed him from the party a long time ago. And then they would have gone after him with everything that they had to make him a pariah, and maybe even try to bankrupt him. A lot of conservatives, when they put their mind to it, are especially good at rat fucking, which, if you don't know what that is, look that term up. Rat fucking is a very powerful but sleazy political tactic invented by conservative political activists. And they could have destroyed him, but they didn't. And they waited too long, and then when they needed somebody popular enough to drag in what kind of their base had become, which is sort of like corn-fed fascists, right? It's these people that are thinking like the narrative that we're getting from the conservatives is that we need to push these weak people away from us, and we need to get the government out of our way, and we need to get out of these international agreements, and we need to stop spending money on this, and this, so that we can all get rich somehow. That they bought into that. Trump sold them that bullshit, even though Trump doesn't understand it. He just understands grievances, because that's what his entire ego consists of. Is just tack together grievances. And so he is probably one of the most effective politicians in the sense that he has single-handedly corrupted an entirely deficient and defunct political party. It is literally, the Republican Party should have been completely without hope 20 years ago. Well, really 10 years ago. Thanks to Trump, it's being completely propped up on his cult of personality. If they go through with the movement conservative moves that they're doing right now and the shit that they're pulling with Ukraine, they're done. They better hope that they change the rules so that they can cheat a lot when it comes to presidential elections, because they're not getting anywhere. They are going to get fucked hard by their own constituents if they do the Medicare, Medicaid stuff.
I want to believe that. I really do. You touched on something a second ago about you said, take the reins off, government out. Government out, yes, but with a little bit of hypocrisy baked in, right? We want little government involvement, except we might want to monitor your pregnancies. We might want to tell you who you can and can't marry, and stuff like that, right?
I want to be able to go to court and say that gay person got the job I deserved, or that person of color got the job that I deserved. But, I want all the other programs to go away. But when I have a grievance and I need an outlet for that in any kind of civil way, I want to make sure that institution's in place. Other institutions that may have been put in place by other groups or by our congressional representatives, fuck that. We can get rid of that. But notice the one thing that we never question really military overgrowth.
Yeah.
And ours was a country.
But yeah,
we spent way too much time in Iraq. We spent over a decade in Afghanistan, well past the point that both of them quagmired. And now that they're over, the United States has still not learned its lesson, because the current president, going back to Tom's thing about the Trump and Ukraine, has actually somehow managed. I've been hearing a lot of conservatives talk about this. They seem to think that they're operating under this idea. It seems like a presupposition that we spent as much time in Ukraine as we did in Vietnam, and almost as much money. It's insane to hear them talk about it. Like the valuable goods that we sent over to them were a drop in the bucket compared to other federal aid that we've given. And we are not actively fighting on Ukraine's behalf. We are not engaged in that war. But when you talk to conservatives, the real MAGA ones, they seem to think like, yeah, Trump is standing up. Even Trump, like if you read between the lines, he implies with his word choice that our soldiers are coming home. I mean, he stopped short of saying it, but it's like, what are you talking about? Our commitment to Ukraine is minimum.
You're giving him too much credit. Yeah. He doesn't know left from right or anything else.
Why a hypocrite, blessed be he? You want to explain why? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it's just, and this whole the Ukraine thing is just unbelievable. You have this wannabe fascist autocrat saying, incapable. No, not incapable. Unwilling of saying that Putin is a dictator. Has no problem saying Zelensky's a dictator.
Yeah.
But will not say that Putin is the same thing, because that's a word that he uses very sparingly and cautiously. Not when he said it about Zelensky. And it's just this unbelievable thing. Like there's never been, I don't think, a better demonstration that, that if Putin ever came to a sudden halt, Trump's head would go so far up his ass that they'd be breathing out of the same nose. It's just unbelievable.
You use liberal talking points, leftist. You are not willing to do the hard work.
What hard work?
What are you talking? Yeah, what in your mind qualifies as the hard work? And if I just spent like 6 minutes, 3 minutes boring Micheal with a tirade about why modern liberals in the United States are fuck ups, explain to me my liberal talking points.
Yeah. It's while they try to fumble around that, another word that bugs me that gets tossed around a lot by the right is woke. I love the word woke. I think it's funny. I use it now. I most recently used it against a wannabe Christian nationalist who thinks that repealing the 19th Amendment is a good idea. um, when he was talking to somebody on a stage on Clubhouse, and he said, somebody said something about Jesus not being God, and of course this guy's a Trinitarian. And "Oh," I said, "Hang on," he said, "Can you please not blaspheme like that in here?" And so I went off mute, and I said, "Well, you worried about the words people are using, man? Why are you being so woke?" Um, I got a good chuckle out of that. This idea of that word has been co-opted by people who don't know what it actually means. Um, so I'll tell you. Um, and I say this as someone who I have all of the privilege pie. I have the whole fucking pie, right? I'm white. I'm a man. I'm straight, and I got some money. Right? I have the whole pie, right? And the woke is that I understand that. I understand that I have all of the privilege through the money part is just because I've worked hard, right? But I was born white, I was born a man, and I was born straight and cisgendered. That's the other one, right? I was born all those things, right? Because you don't choose to be gay.
Yeah.
I was born all those things. I did.
You just made Blessed Be He cry with that last.
Yeah. I had nothing to do with any of those things, and I understand that. And what I try to do is I try to work to level the playing field from my position of privilege. That's all it is. It's not anything more than that. And if you're too stupid to understand that, rewind the video 45 seconds and listen to it again.
That's for you, Blessed Be He. It's making real change in the world. Liberals just talk and do nothing. Okay. But you haven't actually said what the real world. So the real work, the hard work, the real work is making real change in the. So
define change. What kind of change?
I'm an atheist. You're not, clearly. If as an atheist, which I'm pretty sure you probably think is, you would conflate with being a leftist, liberal, demon rat, right? If I successfully aided in the deconversion of Christians, would that be me making a real change in the world for my side? Just asking if you would accept that as.
Yeah,
because you're being vague. Jay says, "Don't you know that all liberals are just lazy fuckwits wanting to take free money from her and other hardworking folks?" Yeah. Because it is just a piggy bank, remember? So like, if, oh God, I'm poor, and if they tax me, they're taking money from me and giving it to some person of color who just sleeps all day, or does what Michael says. All they do is watch porn, whack off, and play video games and eat cheese curls and shit. Like, oh, okay. Here's the thing, though: your tax money didn't go to that person. Yep. That's not how federal financing works. That's not how that aid works. So calm down. It's the reason why when you tell a cop, "Hey, I pay your salary, you work for me," they roll their eyes and then laugh at you before they shoot you. Sorry, they don't do that.
Yeah. Write the ticket. Write the ticket. Before they write
They'll just write that ticket. Yeah. Or send you to jail. The reason that they know they do that is because they know damn well that is not how your taxes work. So, well, some of them do, and some of them do think that's how taxes work, and they don't care.
Yeah. I mean, as a lifelong civil servant, I've never had that said to me.
Yeah.
I've never had somebody say, "I pay your salary."
I ran into it once at my job as a civil servant, where they decided to post all of our income.
Oh,
But
really?
because we're civil servants, it was foiable. So somebody at a newspaper, so this was years and years ago, somebody decided they were going to do that. So they turned it into a little database on their newspaper, and you could go in there and search. I remember because I had coworkers who looked me up and they were like, "You've been here longer. Why are you making less than me?" And I was like, "That's a good question." So yeah, it turned into a thing.
It's interesting. So in Canada, we have this thing called the Sunshine List, which is any public servant who makes, I believe it's over $100,000 a year, gets their name posted this thing called the Sunshine List. I've always been able to avoid that because I work with members of vulnerable populations. And so my identity gets a little bit, I get an extra layer of protection. So I've never had to deal with that. But yeah, I mean, for someone who would say something like, you pay my salary, it's like, yeah, a nickel, maybe.
Yeah.
Because yeah, they don't understand. They balance their checkbook and they know how much they give to the cable company and to the phone company and stuff like that. So they figure, that's as deep as it goes, but they don't understand how it works. Like if anything, in Canada, what you're really doing is paying for everybody else's healthcare, right? If you want to get that, then about it, because 51 cents out of every tax dollar collected in Canada goes to healthcare. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Lot, right? But it means that's why I remember I was having a conversation with Skylar Fiction a couple of years ago, and he was telling me a story about how he had injured himself and he had to decide whether or not he was going to take an ambulance or drive himself to the hospital. Conversations we never have in Canada.
Yeah.
And he decided to drive himself because to go the mile or so, I think he said it would have cost about $3,000. And I just shook my head. And I said, this was a while ago. I don't know. Maybe it's because the area is he's in Florida. I don't know. But I said to him, that's unfortunate because, we also have to pay for ambulance rides. And if we have to if Air Orange, which is like our helicopter ambulance thing, if we have ever had to have Air Orange called for us, we have to pay a portion of that as well. Do you want to know how much it is? And he got right up close to the camera. And I told him. And that number hasn't changed significantly in 30 years. It's $40.
Well, I think I told you the story. Maybe others would like to hear it as well. The difference between, it really was one of the things that kind of set me on the path. I was already shifting away from conservatism, and I'd started reading on public policy for healthcare. I got kind of curious about that. But the last time I was in Japan, I got sick on Christmas, around Christmas time, food poisoning, really bad.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I tried to just tough it out. I obviously didn't have any health insurance, and everybody was like, well, if you go to the hospital, you're going to have to spend an ungodly amount of money. And I was like, oh, crap, what do I do? Finally, it got so bad. I was getting dehydrated. I was turning gray. I couldn't keep anything down, not even water. I'm like, well, we've got to go. So we go. By the time everything was said and done, I ended up paying out about a little north. I'll say this: I didn't get an ambulance, but I went in on Christmas Eve, Christmas morning was when I went in.
Okay.
Middle of the night, got multiple X-rays, I think an ultrasound, and 4 or 5 prescriptions, a full exam, and 7 vials worth of blood labs. They ran everything on me, everything, and
Probably
they ran it that. Probably they ran it all that night. I got it within we were there for about 2 hours, and I got everything, got the results back. They did all the testing and stuff there. I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. With the pills and everything, it cost me just north of $260.
Yeah.
for all of that. And everybody was like, my Japanese friends like, man, we could have gotten you that a lot cheaper if you'd gone to so-and-so's doc out the way. And I'm like, well, I got to tell you right now, that would have cost me probably $9,000 back in the States.
Yeah.
And they didn't believe me. They're like, there's no way it's that screwed up there. And I'm like, oh, yes. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It's obscene.
Yeah.
We were down in Kansas City visiting friends of ours that we met on vacation many years ago. We went down to their place, and their daughter had an ear infection. These are two nurses. One's a labor and delivery nurse, and the other one is the manager of an ER, right? She's like the head nurse of an ER. And they're sitting down at a table deciding whether or not they should, well, because if we go outside network or inside network or this or the co-pays, this and that and the other thing. And my wife and I, we're just like this. We're like looking at them like, and we're just watching and listening. And after everything was all said and done, and the dog was taken care of, and she's perfectly fine, we said, those are conversations we have about our dog.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's just, you just like, I mean, if you show up at a hospital in Canada, everything's taken care of. If you're on medications, they tell you to, like, if you have special medical conditions, they always tell you either take pictures of your stuff or bring your medications with you. But once you are admitted into a hospital, even if it's just triage and you're seeing an ER doctor and you need medications, they give you the medications you need. You don't use yours anymore.
Yeah.
And any medications you need while you're in hospital are paid for. If you break a bone, you do have to buy crutches, right? But just like the ambulance ride and crutches and stuff like that, the insurance that I have through my employer pays for that, so I don't have to pay anything at all. It's just, I carry this little card in my wallet. It just says health on it, and then it says Santé, because French and English. And I can take that to any healthcare practitioner from coast to coast to coast and walk out with no bill whatsoever. But 51 cents out every tax.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So, like, it's just, and you want us to give that up to fly your shittier looking flag?
Well, it actually started because, I don't know if you'd heard about this, but when people started, one of the things that was starting to upset some of the conservatives were people saying, well, why would Canada want to become a state? Just some 51st state to the U.S. And then everybody's like, well, actually, if you stop and think, there's conservatives are like, they really wouldn't be that, they're not that economically powerful. If you think about it, per person, it'd be about as economically viable as like Arkansas or something like that. If you look at per person wealth compared to the U.S. And it's like, right. And then it took a minute and then it sank in. Wait a minute. So if they were a state, they wouldn't be one of the wealthiest states in the United States, but they have national health care.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it was like, yes, because our government, because certain politicians in this country, first of all, they don't understand how it should work. Most of them can't even talk about it correctly because they don't know the difference between single payer and national health care, any of that kind of stuff. And the United States is so big and so bloated in some ways, we actually have all of them. We have a single payer system, we have a national health care plan, and then we've got all the layers of private stuff built into it. So, and the only one that's really efficient is the national health care system that's through the system with the VA, because their records.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we like to go a layer deeper to really piss off Blessed Be if still here.
Oh, she's here. She's acting up in the chat.
Yeah, there are people who don't work that get better health care than I do.
Well, that's the reason right there. Canada has to be rescued from itself by the powers of Trump the Magnificent.
So the people, for example, I like dental care. We're actually working on getting dental care included in our healthcare plan. It's close. It's very close to being passed. If someone collects, so in Ontario, we have this thing called ODSP, or the Ontario Disability Support Program. These are people who cannot work, right? Maybe someone who's on the autism spectrum, who's not high enough functioning, like within the operating percentile, to care for themselves. So they get every month within their benefit package, they get basically like a card that they take to their pharmacist, to their practitioners, whatever. Fucking everything's paid for. Eyeglasses, dental, everything. They get semi-private hospital coverage. They get fucking everything paid for, because we have this crazy idea, like I said before, that we take care of the people who have the least.
Well, there's even the argument that you could make. People started making it after 9/11. After 9/11 happened, there were concerns about, follow-up attacks. And one of the scenarios that they were game theorying was the idea of a biological attack. And one of the things that came up is that a biological agent released into the United States would be especially devastating because of the United States patchwork healthcare system. A national healthcare system would make the entire country more secure from something like a biological or chemical attack coast to coast.
Yeah. Look at the COVID response, right? What is it? 1 million Americans died, right?
Yeah, we're up to 1.22 million.
Jesus fuck. You could have fucking knocked it out of the park better than anybody. Right? You could have done so much better, but you've been lied to so much by so many people. Right? All of the evils that have been talked about. It's just not the thing. Like, all the things you're thinking about, blessed be he, all the things you're thinking about right now, they're not true either. No, that one too. That's also no, and also that one. All the things you're thinking about, they're not true. You've all been lied, and that one. You've just been
I'm going to take a guess right. The next thought that comes into your head, it's a lie.
It's a lie. Yeah. It's just not the case. And so, you have this idea, and again, Maple's a reason. Yeah, it can be, especially if it's still in the can. And you had the good stuff is always in a can. It's never in a bottle.
You guys have maple syrup in a can?
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff that comes from Quebec, which has some of the best maple syrup, it comes in, you buy it in the store in a can that you open with a can opener and then pour into another type of dispenser. And that's the best shit.
No kidding.
When you come up and see us, because I won't cross the border to come and see you. When you come up and see us,
fair.
I will get you cans of maple syrup, and it's the best shit you've ever had. You can probably sell it on the street, like, get some of that. You got maple syrup money, it's like get that good crack money.
I'm gonna quote Coffee Smug on my way back over the border. Like, what's with all the maple syrup? Biological attack on the nation's capital.
Exactly.
I'm gonna syrup the hell out of it.
Yeah. But it's just this thing where you just have to, again, get beating this dead horse. This horse is dead, but you just have to take care of people, right? And the idea that this blessed be he is probably a Christian, and you may not be on board with that. I think that says a lot about you as the type of Christian.
It does. It says a lot about you as Christians in general, where it's sort of like kill or be killed, and there's a lot of weird social, kind of a confused social Darwinism mixed into American evangelical Christianity, which I'm guessing blessed be he is in that camp, because she doesn't sound like. I mean, she sounds like she might be Eastern Orthodox. I mean, I've seen Eastern Orthodox use similar kind of trolley tactics, but usually it's the Thalasso bros like Jim Bob or Andrew Wilson that kind of adopted Eastern Orthodoxy because it gives them some kind of Christian cover.
Yeah. I just threw up in my mouth a little bit when you said both those names.
Sorry. Yeah,
those guys are tremendous assholes. Hey, so when are you guys pulling out of NATO?
Any day now. I mean, the way, I mean, this goes back to what Tonton was asking about the way they're treating Ukraine. The flip on that, the servility that he is showing to Putin, and just willing to lie on behalf of Russian propaganda and saying things like, well, Zelensky could have ended this a long time ago. He never should have gotten involved in this fight. He shouldn't have started this fight. He's a dictator because he hasn't allowed elections. It's like they're literally fighting for their survival over there.
Exactly.
And then at the same time saying any of our efforts cost us too much and we need to get them back. At this point, the last bit of news that I saw was that he's bullying his way into trying to get U.S. Mitts on some of their mineral wealth.
Yeah.
and I guess Zelensky was kind of tentatively going to talk about it, but Trump insisted, "Oh, we're not going to do anything for your security. We're going to," his words, "we're going to have Europe take care of that."
Yeah,
I'm like,
you know,
you're
yeah,
not going to get Europe to do shit. That's not how it works.
yeah. That basically slid a paper across the table saying, "Here, sign this." You know, don't read any, don't, never mind the fine print. Don't read the bold print. Just sign this. Give us all your shit, and then we'll get somebody else to take care of you. It's that, you know, this art of the deal. Like, for somebody who wrote Art of the Deal, man, he's not a good deal maker. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. The Yeah, I think you guys are out of NATO in May when they meet in this, when the summit. I wonder though, because it's going to be in the Netherlands, which is interesting. I don't know if he'll go after the Netherlands since Denmark told him to go fuck himself over Greenland, or what. But it's going to be very interesting. But yeah, everybody's heard. You can all find the clips of him complaining about the trade agreement with Canada and Mexico, right? He's quoted as saying, you know, what kind of deal is this? Who did? You did, dumbass. Um, in 2018, in 2017, there was this little thing called NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. Trump didn't like that. So he put together, his lackeys, because he can't even spell trade, let alone know what it merely means, came up with the USMCA. This was his idea. And in 2018, he touted it as the greatest fucking thing since sliced bread. And in
Yeah, I remember.
2025, he is saying, who did this deal?
We need to start a trade war with Mexico and Canada because this deal was such shit. Like, it's your deal.
It's your deal. You did it, dumbass.
Yeah. Tom, but could it be that the POTUS has more information than you do when he says Zelensky could have done something in the past? Look, that's not what I'm contesting. If by Zelensky doing something in the past you mean lifting his skirt and bending over for Putin, yeah, Zelensky could have done that at any time. He could have just given up and let Russia take them. So no, I agree with you. He could have done that. What is it that you think that he could have done something in the, like, was he going to stop Russia's push into taking more Ukrainian territory on his own? No, he wasn't. And do you know how I know that? Not because I trust what Zelensky says, but because I trust what Putin has said about what his plans were for Ukraine.
Like, what do you say? Like, so just be another Belarus?
Yeah.
Like, because that's kind of the thing there, right? Like, just be another Belarus. Like, Putin wants the resources, is my understanding. Because
we are dealing with Tom. So we're dealing with public information. He could have other. Okay, so he's got other information other than what Biden had. So while Biden was in, Biden disregarded any of this kind of potential treacherous, dictatorial, nasty Zelensky didn't exist because Biden covered up all that information. And now that Trump's in there, he's shedding light on the real character that Zelensky is. And you expect me to believe this fan fiction narrative so that I'll like Trump more?
Hang on, didn't Biden die in 2003 or something like that? He was a puppet. Yeah, wasn't it just Jim Henson? You know.
Yeah, it's all been done. It's being done with mirrors. Yeah.
Yeah. So that
no, Tom. I understand that you're talking about information, but what in order for that to work, that means that we were being fed nothing but information about Zelensky for at least the last 4 years, because this has been going on since before Putin actually invaded. This has been going on even before they took Crimea. There were these tensions happening there. So this idea that what you're trying to say, well, we're not getting the whole picture. Maybe the president knows more about this. Okay. Compare that with maybe Trump has access to information that's not been made to the public until he says it. So the only way we know about this otherwise unknown information is when we hear it uttered from the words of dear leader. But it can't be verified or backed up by the press or anything else or any of the previous information that we got. Do you understand that that's a fucking problem?
Yeah, or falsified either. Like and
you can't. Yeah,
and if something can't be falsified, or verified or falsified, it's not worth serious consideration.
no, he's just talking out of his ass. The reason that he's doing that is because he is giving in to Putin. It's been Putin's claim that, look, we're just trying to take Ukraine back because we're going to save it from the Nazi influence within it, which was something that they invented. Now, it's not to say that there aren't right-wing groups or parties that are that exist in Ukraine, but Putin's whole characterization was they had taken over the government and that they needed to be stomped out. What they were doing was denazification, or kind of like the de-Baathification of Iraq that America tried.
Yeah, there's extremist groups all over the place. Like we've got one here, the Christian Heritage Party in Canada, and
oh god,
yeah, there's something else. Like they're very kind of like, I guess Christian nationalist kind of idea, like women as Handmaid's Tale kind of thing. But it's like, what's the best way to kind of? I've been trying to think. I've been going through this. The best way to summarize kind of how. Because when we started this whole kind of thing, what does Canada think? That it's kind of like the U.S. is like this crazy Venn diagram of Handmaid's Tale, 1984, Team America, World Police.
One of my favorite musicals. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Idiocracy. Right. And you're right in the middle. That's where you are, right there.
Yeah.
And again, prefaced by Canada's not perfect. We never claim perfection in any way, shape, or form. Our current still Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, some shady shit, right? There's a reason why he stepped down. He didn't stand a fucking snowball's chance in hell against Pierre Poilievre.
No.
Now, Mark Carney, probably going to be our next PM. He will likely take the Liberal leadership. He's super smart. He's the only non-Brit to ever be head of the Bank of England. He was also head of the Bank of Canada, super smart guy. And what's really the funniest thing for us, the kind of the thing that has me kind of frothing at the mouth over is when it comes to debate time, the Conservatives in Canada always talk about the Liberals spending too much, the Liberals spend too much, the Liberals spend too much. Carney is quite literally a fucking economist. Who better to talk about how to manage money from a fiscal perspective than a fucking economist? Pierre Poilievre is a career politician in Canada. He's never had another job. He's never been anything in the private sector. He has also never put a bill up for a vote to become law in all of his time in politics. Never once. He's the Jim Jordan of Canada.
Huh. Well, I hope you guys don't get stuck with him. But from what I've seen from him, he's still leagues away from being one of our. I mean, he's not like a Marjorie Taylor Greene.
No. The whole I'd see the funny thing is that our right is still basically your Bernie Sanders.
Kind of, yeah.
Right.
Tom, I'm trying to differentiate between information that POTUS has, whether it was Biden or Trump, and public information. Potentially, public information is more limited then. Yeah, Tom, I get that. I'm going to try to put this to you as succinctly as possible. Our government has had extended talks with Zelensky. Details of those talks were detailed in major press outlets and in primary sources here in the United States. They're consistent with the fact that Ukraine was invaded by Russia. The current president is saying that that it's not an invasion and that it was all Zelensky's fault. He started the war.
Yeah.
That is literally a president saying all those facts that you remember saying. Don't believe that. Trust me. That is the action of an authoritarian leader.
Yeah.
Don't trust your lying eyes. Trust dear leaders' statements.
Yeah. When you have somebody trying to broker peace talks with people in Saudi Arabia not exactly a bastion of democracy. And they don't invite to the table the country that has been invaded, and instead just want to say, we're going to put this deal together for him. We just need you to sign it, and everything's going to be fucking hunky dory. And when asked about that, Trump's response was, he's been at the table for 3 years. You know, he could have stopped this before it ever happened. No.
Yeah. No.
Russia lined up on the Ukraine border and said, we coming in. February 22nd, 2022. 2022? Yeah. And we coming in because we want your shit.
Yeah.
What the fuck does it? And I don't know anything personal. I mean, I didn't know, in fairness, I didn't know much about Zelensky before that invasion took place, right? You know,
Yeah.
I'm missing that, you know, Ukraine history on my bingo card. But you know, I mean, it was still one nation lining up on the border of another sovereign nation and saying, yeah, we want your shit. We're coming to jacket from you.
Yeah.
But we could all be mistaken because public information.
Oh my God, Tom, what is wrong with you? Yes, I get that's what you're saying. Do you have some evidence that Biden knew that what Michael just got done talking about this? What information do either of them have? What do you think it is that makes you think that a country the size of Ukraine, with Zelensky as its leader, could have stopped a belligerent invasion from Russia, led by Putin? You are being a shitty apologist for our president when you don't need to be. You don't live here. You don't need to back the guy.
Oh, where's
Aren't
Tom?
you in Croatia? Yeah, he lives in Croatia, I think. Croatia,
okay.
Serbia. Yeah. Or Germany.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe he lived in Germany. I'm not sure where he currently is, but he's in Europe.
We need somebody less controversial in here, like Jill or something.
Well, blessed be, he is almost as contradictory with every other statement, so that's pretty close.
Oh, really?
Well, I need to get going, but I think we covered everything that there is to cover so far. But we'll, you know, if you don't mind, I'd like to invite you back, because we'll probably have to talk about Canada-America relations again.
Well, yeah, I think it's I think what's going to be interesting is again the whole kind of March 12th. We'll be in Mexico when the shit hits the proverbial. I guess we'll see. But yeah, the short answer is yes, absolutely. It's always fun to be here. I like bringing my foul mouth nature to your channel.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Tom, you need to go and practice some breathing techniques. I have no evidence, but do you have evidence that Biden not making it public is evidence that it's not the case? Come on. Sure.
That's fallacious. That's shifting the burden of proof.
Yeah. Not only that, but what you're the one pretending, you're the one that's saying maybe Trump has information and maybe Biden had it too, that you don't know about, that actually suggests there's some truth to what that Zelensky could have done something different to start the war. Well, after I already conceded that Zelensky could have ended the war by simply giving up. So I don't know what you're trying to win, what argument you're trying to win here. Okay, our president is a stupid douchebag. You trying to be an apologist for him kind of makes you a stupid douchebag too. You don't need to do that. Read some books. Take some deep breaths. Hell, do what Michael suggested. Start playing video games and masturbating and eat more cheese.
There you go. Isn't that the solution to pretty much everything?
I think so, but
I don't know.
I've been trying to
Xbox is downstairs waiting for me.
Okay. He's probably trying to figure out, like, were you guys just talking about cheese eating and masturbation the entire time? Like,
yeah, no, no, you missed what I said. I said my Xbox is downstairs waiting for me.
I thought you said.
but my wife actually is just getting home as well, and we've been doing this for over 2 hours now. So
yeah, it's been 2 hours. No, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear Xbox. It cut out. I thought you said. I thought you were trying to say Shannon. That's what it kind of got garbled. Sorry.
No, that's funnier. That's funnier. But no, it's all good. Yes, Shannon is home now. So I'll go downstairs and say hello to my beautiful wife. And
Well, say hello for me. And I hope, if I see you guys, I'm there as a tourist and not as a refugee. But no
exactly.
promises.
I joked around about our spare room going up on Verbo, right?
I mean, it's gonna get the valuation's just gonna climb and climb and climb as the months go on.
Hey, look, yeah, it's not it's our spare bedroom, but you have your own bathroom.
Oh, see, no, I can't afford that. No one's going to be able to afford that as a refugee from the U.S. No.
And hot and cold running healthcare.
I would settle even for just cold, just a cold tap. All right. Well, thank you everybody in the chat for joining us for this. And, likes appreciated, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. Any suggestions, please send them to me at jeffersonspatchcock@gmail.com. Micheal, do you have any links you want to give out for anybody listening?
Yeah, check out the podcast, the capodcast.ca. We've had some really good guests recently. Dr. Kip Davis and Dr. Josh Bowen were on again. Who's coming on soon? Justin from Deconstruction Zone. We're working on getting him on. Steve Jakatis from Humanist Canada is coming on tomorrow night to talk about his new
cool.
And who else? Oh, and one of my favorite episodes of the last kind of couple months is Melanie Trechik King was on, and Melanie is kind of like a critical thinking pseudoscience debunker. She was on talking about kind of the pillars of critical thinking and stuff like that. That's an amazing one to check out. So the capodcast.ca, direct all of your hate mail to my podcast partner, Dean Roberts. I'm just kidding. You can email us theca@rogers.com. And if you want to come on and have a conversation, we're always happy to have that. Even blessed be he, we'd even have you on, as I get to tear apart your religion.
She'll put in the work. She'll put the time in. So I mean, that may be fun to bat around for about.
Will she be putting in the hard work though? That's the question. Will she put in the hard work?
No, she's going to troll. She'll just troll, yeah. Maya says to put your links in the chat if you can. I don't know if you're watching this on YouTube.
Is this
just pull up
the chat? There we go. Hang on. Here we are. Oh, okay, here we are. How the fuck do I do that? What? Can I do that easily?
Good to see you, Red Fang. You're right. Tom, Ukraine is one of our allies. We are going to help them. I probably should have started with that, Red Fang. Thanks for keeping it succinct.
Oh, no, it's only sending messages only supported for hosts, so I can't do that.
Oh, well, can you launch another tab and just...
oh, yeah, I can open... Hang on. Yeah, I can open YouTube.
Or you can send it to me. You can send it as a private chat to me, and I can copy and paste it over.
No, I'm smart. Oh, I'm in the stream now, and I just muted it, and so I'm going to put it in here now. Hang on.
Sorry, but I only listened to Andrew Tate's Manly Man podcast. All the best recommendations for how to avoid the law, unless you're in Romania or Bulgaria. I think it was Romania.
And
yep, there it is. Let's see. Show that on screen. Canadian Atheist, the capodcast.ca. And you guys can reach him at the ca@rogers.com. So those are there in there. And if I edit this, I'll try to get those links in the description as well. But other than that.
Well, yeah, we'll say a proper goodbye once you hit the stop button.
Okay. Well, folks, that's it for us. Thanks for joining us live for this. Even blessed be here. Tom, read a book about, actual foreign relations or something. With that, we'll get out of here. Also, Maya, I have a question. Why was blessed be he is saying anything about you calling in sick? You don't have to share that in the chat, but at some point I want to know that sounds like there's history on that. I know she haunts your your weekly show. So yeah, one of these days you got to explain that to me. Anyway, folks, we're going to get out of here. Thank you, Mike, again for being here. And yeah, with that, we are out of here. Good night, everybody.
Cheers.